Hello everyone. Welcome to the second new moon in Virgo, partial solar eclipse, a page out of an old book themed readings. For these secret code names to really make sense, we are going to flash back into March of this year when this eclipse cycle with the Virgo Pisces axis started. It started on March 14th. On March 14th, the moon in Virgo was on the south node, opposing the sun, who was conjunct Saturn on the north node, trining on Mars in Cancer, and sextiling Uranus in Taurus. Mars was coming into its square with Chiron in Aries, and Venus is retrograde throughout this entire eclipse cycle. Now, Venus only goes retrograde for about 40 days every 18 to 19 months, which makes areas of love and money a highlight for this time. She's semi-squaring Uranus. We'll get back to this in a minute. Uranus aspecting on this transit brought in radical changes to our reality in Venus's home sign of Taurus. These shifts were intended to bring emotional value to our everyday life and put us in alignment with our spiritual authority. We were showcasing how much we care and wanting to be the best at it. There could have been personal victories, feeling like we finally got everything we wanted, but it was potentially coming from a wounded, competitive place. I'm better than them. Or emotionally having someone else up on a pedestal that they loved being on, like a rush or a high being number one. Or, the rush or high from making someone number one. Mind you, it's all coming from a wounded place. With that semi-square between Venus and Uranus, whatever quote-unquote victories we created surrounding themes of love, money, commitment, would ultimately end up coming undone or needing to come undone in order for this process, this healing process, to really solidify. This transit, unbeknownst to us, was integrating the balancing of our emotions in our everyday life with our spiritual authority, looking at how we feel every day and perfecting it by solidifying who we are and who we are seen to be as we become closer to spirit, redefining ourselves in a higher light, right, with all this Piscean energy. We may have been guided intuitively to move forward with certain things because there were wounds connected to Chiron that needed to heal once and for all. Wounds that continuously pop up and quote-unquote guide us in the wrong direction so we can figure out the right direction. These radical changes were intended to bring revelation. And with Uranus now retrograding back towards Taurus, the aha moments are going to start happening over the next few months. We were having a really hard time seeing the mirror back in March. Lost in a state of self-abandonment, trying to be the best balance for other people to prove our worth. However, this is all very diluted and riddled with hidden demons. The biggest underlying issue buried in here is wanting to feel in control of the demons and fears within the self that we know about, proving you can choose against them, but not actually taking the steps our intuition has been guiding us to take to dig to the root of why they are attached to us in the first place. Demons, quote-unquote demons, are not something you can control or prove wrong or prove powerless. They are either attached to you or they aren't. And the only way to detach from them is to recover your spiritual authority. to heal the root cause and act in a new light from a new belief system about yourself and your connection with the divine. This transit was setting us up for a spiritual win by creating the stage for a collapse in the reality to learn from now and through the remaining Virgo Pisces eclipses in 2026. The dominoes this transit set up are starting to fall now. How we have built our reputation now in the present because of these March eclipses, it's now in direct conflict with our spiritual authority. And the Chiron wound that set this stage is begging to be acknowledged so that it can heal. We are in the middle of the climax of the Virgo Pisces nodal axis transit. We are reaching that pinnacle moment in the middle where the build that started in March is starting to flip into the result, right? What we built is now resulting in something, and we're here in the middle looking at the things that we did, the things that we chose, the things that we put off, the things that we went forward with, and where we are now, realizing it is not everything we thought we were creating. Now, the second piece to this puzzle, March 29th was an off-sign eclipse, meaning the sun and moon were within range of the north node that was in Pisces, but they were in Aries. So there was an eclipse, a partial solar eclipse on the 29th, off sign. During this transit, Uranus is now in semi-square to the sun and moon, to the eclipse in Aries, who are nearly in the same exact spot Venus was in on the 14th. Emotions could have run really high in defense of the self, surrounding those love and money areas that we touched on from the 14th, and needing to be the priority, and changes were made. Venus has now retrograded back into Pisces, conjunct Neptune, North Node, and Saturn, and Mercury also went retrograde. This is tying off all the loose ends of the Aries Libra nodal transit, learning the lessons from that cycle and getting ready to move into the next one. In the light of this polarity, Chiron wounds we faced head on, consideration of the self and how we feel and how we allowed ourselves to be treated, shifted in defense of the self and inner harmony. The self and what we need to succeed as an emotionally sovereign being was the priority. A major, I'm not eating anyone's BS anymore, good riddance to all this or that was keeping me from feeling good about all my relationship dynamics, and finally, no more getting taken advantage of kind of energy. That's if you are in the light of this transit. Even if emotions were high, even if things were cut off from an emotional trigger, everything that was done in the light was in alignment with that success and the sovereignty of the self, right? Where the self was a priority, not taking anyone's crap. In the shadow of this polarity, if it wasn't learned, right? If this Aries Libra transit, if the lesson wasn't learned, if the attachments to our demons weren't enlightened, this may have looked like sheer defiance against independence and sovereignty, doubling down on codependency over a worthiness wound, an abandonment wound that was coming out as passionate emotions, overcompensating with strong emotions, the confusion of lust with love, completely cutting off the intuition, not trusting, cutting off what needs to be cut off because of a fear of being alone or a fear of being a failure, reconciling with toxic partners, love bombing, or emotional warfare, using the wounds or fears of another against them for personal gains or personal, like, ego-driven desires for victory over someone else. Essentially, you are either breaking free of the contracts or commitments that you dedicated yourself to back during the last Mercury retrograde cycle that was in December of 2024. Or you were doubling down in the Chiron wound, completely sacrificing the self, martyring the self in order to completely abandon, right, yourself and your inner balance for the balance of other people, for the happiness of other people, putting your happiness last on the list, if it was on the list at all. And now that we are at the middle, right, this climactic moment in the Virgo Pisces nodal cycle, we're really looking back. If you were in the light of this, you're really looking back at the choices that were made, the things that were done back in March with clear eyes, knowing that you did ultimately make the right choice for yourself, and you're glad you did. And the unfoldment of that gratitude, the unfoldment of that clarity and understanding is going to start to manifest for you. In the shadow of this, right, being at this middle now where we are, the choices that were made back on the first eclipse that was not off sign, right, the one that was in Virgo and Pisces back on the 14th, the stage that was getting set with that Chiron wound, who you have built yourself to be now, and how far removed you are from peace, from inner harmony, from being at a state of, I am grateful for the people in my life. I am grateful for all that I have. All that I've done has been worth it. You know, I have no regrets. It's being really far removed from that energy. So as we get into these secret code name readings, a page out of an old book, I thought it was pretty significant because back in March, I wasn't actually going live and doing readings or cosmic currencies or astrology or anything like that, right? And going back, being able to revisit this transit, knowing that it's significant for these reads, it's really going to show in the energy where you landed on that spectrum. Did you heal the old Chiron wound? Were you successful coming out of the March eclipse transits? Or did you miss the mark? Did you miss the mark and need a bit of a stronger lesson, right? The different readings that we go through today are going to address exactly that. It's going to bring up the ghost, right? The quote unquote ghost of the past energy. It's going to bring up what this current remaining transit of Virgo and Pisces looks like, and some best advice or insight into the energy moving forward. With that said, let's get into the message. So, secret codename Beetlejuice, your shuffle is up in the corner. The first cards out are the ghost, the quote-unquote ghost energy of this eclipse cycle. For you, we have the Rakshasa and the world. The Rakshasa is a lawful, contracted evil or shadow energy. It's a card of dominance and mind control, right? Someone or something was acting like an exterior force, imposing itself on another's mind. So back then, if it was someone in your reality, the manipulations could have felt obligatory, right? That you would feel obligated to them. Or it would paint a fear of consequence. More likely, whatever it looked like was a force or idea that you mentally, quote unquote, enslaved yourself to. It's a lesson metaphoric to a free drifting object getting captured to a planet because of its gravity. As time goes on, it forgets it was ever free, right? Being pulled into the gravity of someone. This Rakshasa card is about how we fall under the control of other people because their energy is a shadow contract that takes up the whole room. Their energy starts dictating your choices based off of your own shadows that you are meant to come into awareness of, shadows that you are meant to heal. And the world is all about completion, accomplishment, fulfillment of a lesson, achieving a goal, right? Even if it's a spiritual goal that you may or may not even be aware of. And it's about traveling the distance between vibrational matching manifestations. You know, you had an old vibrational energy that matched the manifestation that you had. And then you'd have to kind of bridge this gap into the new energy, the new vibrational match that equates to your new manifestation, right? The World card is about transitioning from one energy to another because that energy that you were in prior, you elevated out of it. You elevated up and out. It's about reaching the end after a full turn of the wheel, right? Knowing you've reached the end after going back again and again, right? Because we don't just, go through a cycle and we're one and done in life. We tend to repeat things, right? So this is something that you're finally leaving after having gone through it, this lesson, multiple times, right? Different people, same energy, just a different day. I feel that this card is really kind of speaking to how something is meant to be seen for its wholeness, right? The good and the bad, the bitter and the sweet, and the knowledge that comes from both. This is a long cycle closing, and I can't help but feel the Saturn alignments may have or are being a huge influence on all of this for you. This is all about gratitude for the opportunity to truly see after the whole duration of it, after all the episodes of the season, to end looking forward to the future, right? Looking to the next season, looking forward to what's coming up. When we finally complete cycles, truly, we look forward to what comes next. And if this is the past energy, right, this is something that you're being reminded of now because you learned something around this issue, felt that victory with something back then in March, right? Something was culminating, especially your Aries Libra cycle, right? From the 2 years prior. With the top and bottom of the deck, we have the 5 of Pentacles on top with the King of Wands on bottom. With the 3 of Swords, you can see is under that. Where you are now is very much in a place of visualizing what it would be like to be on your own or live your own life without anyone else to consider or depend on, especially for financial or material reasons or like physical presence, right? Physical presence reasons. Pentacles, earth sign energy, right? With these being the primary energies for where you were and where you are now because of it, a major cycle of manipulation lessons is ending. That was the setup happening back in March. Now where you're at with it, you're really ready to just be active in your own manifestation, right? Whether you realize that or not. You are over losses and dealing with the painful recovery, right? The painful recovery, especially to your mental and spiritual energy. Getting into the rest of the tarot with the Three of Cups and the Judgment card in the reverse. For now, you've made or are likely to make a judgment call to reopen with some energy outside of yourself. The judgment call to transcend the mirror of it hasn't occurred yet. The Hanged Man with the Seven of Coins, this is a heart over head decision you're being patient with. But there's always this need to remind about the difference between patience and waiting. It's like the difference between faith and hope. Whenever we make heart over head decisions, we must accept we are choosing to stagnate in order to see from a different lens about ourselves. Who are you waiting on if it's not you? Right? Always be patient with yourself, but never be the one you're waiting on. With the Ace of Pentacles and the Four of Cups reversed, this is a solid foundations are opportunities from the divine that we seize type energy. This may be something you previously rejected about yourself, not believing you were worthy of seizing the opportunity. But you are being reminded of the power in seizing opportunity now. Because with the Ace of Wands and the Six of Cups both reversed, when the spark and the magnetism, the quote-unquote love, right? What most people connect with as love, dies. Well, so does the need to continue with that soulmate or with that circumstance. What you needed to learn, the lesson, is over. The rest is just self-inflicted punishment if you stay beyond that quote-unquote point of death. None of that is necessary for you to heal what needed to be healed. So where you're at now in the middle of this cycle is knowing you have the wherewithal and the experience to release whatever needs to be released. You just needed to be reminded of when that connection is noticeably gone after pings that it was separating already happened before now, right before now. That if it's not ending when it needs to, you are essentially the figure underneath a Rakshasa energy person or situation. That gravity. With that, let's get into the guidance. Card number 39. It starts with a Sarah McLachlan quote, and I'm sure you're going to know it. In the arms of the angel, fly away from here. You are pulled from the wreckage of your silent reverie. You're in the arms of the angel. May you find some comfort here. This card. For those who consider the notion of being broken, whether it's broken in life, mind, body, heart, or spirit, the healing process starts with a bond. The gentle reassurance that we are not alone. This is tied to the energy of the root chakra that seeks self-preservation. We care and want to fix in others what's broken within ourselves, which is why one day we will be pushed, nudged by spirit to take our own best advice to them in regard to them. Take joy in being the grounded energy. But remember, you can't hold on to birds forever. Eventually, they all want to fly. This is a reminder that even though we find ourselves in beautiful bonds where we see ourselves, right, and want to help someone else heal what we feel is broken within ourselves. And it's a beautiful bond that we can share during that time. But at some point, you gotta let the bird fly free. Right? Birds are not meant to be caged. They're not meant to be held on to forever. They're meant to fly. And so looking back at these cycles, on the whole, knowing that you know that you've experienced it before a certain way, right? This Rakshasa energy. That you experienced that gravity before. But can you also experience it in a new way? Whenever we go through these cycles, right, they tend to repeat. This is talking about something that's ending that was repeating over and over again, because you're finally seeing it as the same energy, but through a different lens. A good example would be like how I knew I ran myself into the ground for, people that I was in love with and sacrificed myself, right? Empath, martyr, the whole bit. And swore I would never be that way in relationships again, only to get into my career, right, and start focusing on my different career and the path that I was on. I did the same thing. Complete empath, threw myself in 100% and was martyring myself, And so it's like I went through this lesson once, and I know how I ended that one, right? I know how I got out of that one, that victory. And I had to reapply it, right? I had to reapply that same lesson. Like, Grace, you gotta let this go too. Like, it's the same lesson. It's the same exact lesson, just in a way you didn't expect. And I had to really dig into the root behind why that repeated. And I've been doing that since March, with the cycle that I'm in. I feel like at some point you have to recognize that these people that you interact with and are drawn to in life, right, feel committed to in life. You felt that connection. You felt that spark at one point that connected the two of you. And it was exciting when you had that gravity with another person, when it was there. That I look forward to you being in my life every day energy. When that energy fades, when it's no longer something you look forward to, something that becomes heavy, something that has you feeling alone, right? Like you've taken losses and you're looking at what it would be like to go on without them, right? To be the manifester of your own reality, your own life, right? That King of Wands, even though it's painful to take the loss, you have to move forward anyway, because otherwise it is just self-inflicted punishment. You are just, quote unquote, enslaving yourself to a dominant, controlling of your energy in a person or a circumstance. You're handing your power over. You're no longer healing, right? Because that spark is gone. That connection is gone. everything you needed to learn the lesson. You've already experienced it. You can learn the lesson just from what you've already experienced. You don't need any more. To know that there's many angels in the world. And sometimes we have to be our own angel. You know, we have to leave these situations. We have to let people go to figure it out. Get into a new level of manifestation. Right? When we're leaving that one energy and seizing the opportunity to get into another, to get into a better one. To know that when this healing process is done, like, we're meant to continue on and keep healing with what we feel connected to, what we feel that spark with, that connection with, the gravity, whatever it is. Especially if it's like a hobby or an interest or something that is personal to you, right? Something authentic to you. It really is up to us who we are and what we experience. We just got to remember that our angels in life, as above and so below. You know, we have our earth angels. You just got to remember to follow those beautiful connections. The beauty in the gravity when we make these connections to people, situations, fascinations, and see where that energy takes you when you freely and willingly detach, when you recognize that chemistry, that ignition, the gravity is done. You know, when the time has been spent, you got to give yourself a little bit of leeway to reflect. You know, give yourself a little bit of time and space to really sit in the process of it all. What were the parts of you that were waiting on them for in hindsight? Because now that you're out of the energy or separated from the energy of that mirror, what was it? What was it that you were in hindsight waiting on within yourself? What was the real value that was missing between you and you? Because that's how you're going to figure how or why you connect to certain people, why you have that spark with certain people, to heal that exact energy. Now you can move on to a new spark or a new vibration to heal and get out of the old cycle. Right? Sometimes the new lessons are really awesome ones. They can come in amazing ways, right? Not so painful ways. But we have to elevate out of the pain state, right, in order to experience it at all. We got to be able to bridge that energy gap. Now, for those of you who don't know what a secret code name reading is, these readings are personal readings. People book these secret code name readings with me. It's their personal reading. And I give them a secret code name so that they know that this reading is theirs, right? The beauty is no one else does. It's secret to them. But because it's public like this and their energy gets to ripple, this is their healing process, right? These are the things that they're going through. So if you also resonated to this reading and it has helped you in some way, drop a thank you in the comments for them, because this is their energy out there, helping other people by being present to the best of their ability, right? To help us in the healing process. So special thank you to secret code name Beetlejuice. Thank you for your presence. And for those of you who would like to get your own personal reading with me for these events, your own secret code name reading, the link to my Etsy shop is in the description. Until we next meet, guys. Bye.